We are moms who are pouring ourselves into our children every hour of every day. We are grandmothers who are also playing the role of primary caretaker. We are moms who are waiting to have children and trying our best to see the struggle through the eyes of God. We are moms who are learning the challenges of a blended family. We are moms in the workplace who are trying our best to balance competing expectations and demands. We are moms with adult children who are leaving our homes to pursue their own dreams. For packing lunches late at night. For cleaning out their backpacks, then filling them again. For offering gentle guidance to your own grown children. For becoming taxi drivers and appointment schedulers. For making sure the right baby doll is in their arms before they go to sleep. For helping them pay back their student loans. For cleaning and sterilizing and cooking. For doing their laundry and his laundry and our laundry. For praying and loving and forgiving and falling down and rising to your feet again. For the mom who is overworked and exhausted. For the mom who seems to spend a million hours on a million little things. For the mom who pours Jesus into her family as best she can. And God himself not only celebrates what you do, but rejoices over the uniqueness of who you are. You are seen, and you are loved without limits. Welcome to Mother's Day.
Good morning. Welcome to New Life Christian Church. For those of you joining us online this morning, thank you for being with us here today. Something really special about today. Kevin's birthday. Everybody, Kevin, make sure you wish Kevin a happy birthday today. Happy birthday, Kevin. Kevin's really special to all of us here. But also, yes, today is Mother's Day. And all of our moms are special. All of the women in our lives are special. We have women that don't have children of their own, and yet they pour in to their nieces and their nephews, or in schools, in churches, everywhere. So today, as we honor our moms, we don't just think of those who have biological children. We think of those who help all of our children. Because let's face it, where would we be without mom? Someone in our lives to help us to do. We would find nothing. Everything would be lost. Laundry wouldn't get done, food wouldn't be prepared, dishes wouldn't be cleaned. You know, even in Mother's Day preparation of fixing a meal, it was mom that was in the kitchen the next morning cleaning and doing the dishes. Kind of felt like, you know, she got a little bit of a bad rap there, but, you know, she jumps onto it really early and doesn't give the rest of us a chance sometimes. But, you know, she's good that way. And that's moms. Moms do that. And a lot of times it's just, you know, it's a thankless job. You know, as kids grow up and try to get their independence, they push away. They want to go, and moms try to hold on. I sat down at my computer to write an article, and I thought about moms, and I thought about how it is for moms as they go through each stage. You know, the joy of finding out that you're pregnant for the first time, and you're so excited and you're so happy about it, but you know that in 9 months it's going to be excruciating pain. But yet we know it doesn't hurt that bad. How many of us in here are second born, third born? You know, so they complain, but we know it doesn't hurt. Right? so, but I think about that. The pain, that momentary pain, is forgotten as soon as you're holding your baby, your bundle of joy, and you forget about everything, and that's the cycle of motherhood. As your child grows up, there's so many milestones in their lives that you want for them, but it brings you so much pain. But you're so happy for them that you forget about that pain in your life because you're happy for them. So for all the moms and women, happy Mother's Day to you. I carry this cross. You guys see me, I wear it everywhere I go. Except for up here because of the microphone. The chain, when I move around, it makes noise, so I can't wear it while I'm wearing the microphone. But when I started to go to school to be a pastor, my mom gave this to me. So it's not only the message on it, which is Philippians 4:13, I can endure all things through Christ who gives me strength. But it's a gift from my mom that I cherish, because with this cross, not only is Christ with me, my mom is with me every time I'm up here on this stage. So happy Mother's Day, Mom. And as we are in Mother's Day today, you might think it's a little weird that we would go ahead and continue on in the book of Genesis and move through it. To our text today is Genesis chapter 25. And it's like, why don't you do a topical? We need a topical sermon on all the mothers in the Bible and how great they are and how everything they've done and all the women and everything. Because, if you read through it, a woman has been involved in every part of the gospel message. If it wasn't for the women and what they did, Christ came through a prostitute, Rahab. There's been a woman of faith all the way through the Bible. But we have a very special woman here that also has faith. And she exhibits it, and it just so happens that this chapter landed perfectly on Mother's Day and has such a great tie-in for it. We meet Rebecca for a second time. She has been brought back, and she marries Isaac. But her story is just beginning. And once again, we meet another woman who is barren. But before I go to that part and just completely blow all of my notes, we're going to back up and start at the beginning of this chapter 25. Because as we step into this text, some very important things are happening in this chapter that we can't overlook. Abraham, life is coming to a close. Abraham has remarried after the death of Sarah. He has a concubine named Keturah. And he has several more children through her. He's 175 years old when he passes away. He remarries and has more kids. If I had a hat. Dude. But he wants to make sure that as his life comes to a close, that Isaac gets the promise. Isaac is the promised child. So even after he remarries and he has more kids, he makes sure that before he dies, he spreads up his assets and he gives them part of it and sends his other kids away so that Isaac will receive the promise. Abraham dies at 175 and is buried beside Sarah in the family tomb. We have a moment here in our text where Isaac and Ishmael actually come together and bury their father. They put away their family turmoil, their family trauma, and they come back together for the death of their father, and they bury him together. Then our text makes a shift, because now we are only concerned with the promised child. So we turn to Isaac and what's going on with him and to the next generation. So now with Abraham's story concluded and Ishmael's line recorded, Scripture turns its full attention to Isaac. He is, after all, the promised child, the one through whom God has said he would bless all nations. But as we've seen before, even in those chosen by God, they aren't exempt from hardship. In fact, Isaac and Rebekah's story begins with a family struggle, one that would test their faith and shape their family's future. I'm going to pick it up now in verses 19 through 21. It says, "This is the account of the family line of Abraham's son Isaac. Abraham became the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel the Aramean, from Paddan Aram, the sister of Laban the Aramean. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was childless. We start off again with another patriarch of the Israelites, and they start off barren. And it seems real quick. I mean, that was a quick line, quick deal. He just got married at barren. Well, what do they expect, Happen like that? Married 7 years. Jennifer's prayer beat mine. And then we had our first child. That's 7 years of anguish. 7 years of wanting to have a child. In that first 7 years of our marriage, we had one consistent fight. She wanted a child. I was content. We argued more over having a child because that's what we ingrain in our daughters growing up, is they must have children, they're going to raise a family, and you're going to do that. We get the baby dolls out so they can play raising a family and having a doll. And we push this narrative on our daughters as they're growing up. You must have a child. You must have a child. You must have a child. That is what you're called to do. You have to have a child. When they get married, how soon before you're going to make me a grandma? I need to be a grandma. Why haven't you given me a grandchild yet? I need to be a grandma. What's the holdup here? There was one time, driving a truck together, I was ready to leave her on the side of the road because we were fighting over having a child. Rebekah waited 20 years. It was 20 years before she had a child. We fought for 7. They made it 20. But then Rebekah went to her husband, and her husband prayed for her. He prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife and said, "Give her a child." They were on the same page. They both wanted a child. I think a lot of times in marriage, it's like that. One parent wants a child, the other one doesn't. And then they flip-flop back and forth until finally they both come together on that same page. And that's usually right after the trip to the drugstore. And then they both want a child. But motherhood, it isn't always easy to come by. I mean, there's some that, bam, child. But for others, it's a struggle. Some, it's even worse, because sometimes the worst thing that could ever happen is they get pregnant. And then they suffer a miscarriage. I think that's the cruelest thing that could ever happen to a mom. Close second for the dad. But that struggle, that longing, that wanting, and God has given that answer and you're happy, and then all of a sudden, it wasn't meant to be. So on Mother's Day, as we celebrate with moms, we must also mourn with moms. They carry silent burdens for their families. And as we're longing for kids, and we're wanting a child so bad and it's not happening, or it has happened and we just don't know what to do. In every phase of a child's life, in every phase of motherhood, mothers that have kids and then the dad doesn't stick around. And they find themselves raising this child by themselves that wasn't the way it was meant to be. And yet they struggle through it. They find the power to carry on. This family, Isaac, prayed for his wife. And we should do that for all of our moms, no matter where they're at, no matter who they are and how they're struggling. Because motherhood, sometimes it's a thankless job. They do so much. They work so hard. And now in our society, we ask them to carry a full-time job and take care of the kids. That's even harder. And yet they bow their heads and do the job. We should always be in prayer for that. Pray for the powerful act of motherhood. And encourage Philippians 4:6 to not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Because God is where our strength comes from. God helps us to carry on. God helps us in those moments where we can't take it anymore. And there's moments when they must go take a nap. Because you're at the end. We must pray to God and ask Him for help and guidance. We also must pray to God how we as husbands, as fathers, as mentors in kids' lives, how can we be there to help and support the moms through all of the things that they're doing? Isaac saw that his wife was in discontent, that she wanted a kid. He went and he prayed for her. He interceded, a prayer of intercession for her. Because that's what he could do to help. Guys, maybe we could do the dishes the morning of Mother's Day to help our wife out. Not me, you guys. Rebekah came to her husband and told him of her desire. And Isaac doesn't respond to Rebekah's barrenness with frustration or despair. He responds with prayer. And in this we see a powerful reminder for all of us, especially for parents and families. Because while waiting is painful, it's in the waiting that we're invited to draw near to God. And as we ask, and as we'll see next, Isaac's prayer moves the heart of God in a remarkable way. I conveniently stopped there in verse 21 because the next half of that is, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. God answers prayer. Isaac prayed for his wife, and God answered. After 20 years, she becomes pregnant. All right, we're fixing to see how good I can do it off the top of my head here in a minute. And even though her pregnancy, 20 years, she finally gets the answer that she was looking for. Her pregnancy is not easy. She's experiencing something in it that she says she doesn't understand what's happening. But then she does something. She cries out to God. We see here that God responds to the cries of his people, even when his answers lead to difficult seasons. So Rebekah finally gets an answer to her prayer. She's been wanting a child for so long, and she finally gets an answer. But yet, she has a difficult time. And you say, how can, if it's an answer from God, if it's an answer to prayer, and yet God answered it in the affirmative, but it's not easy. Everything's not going right. Then we assume that, well, maybe this isn't from God. Maybe God didn't answer my prayer. But sometimes we have to go through the difficult times to strengthen our faith, to come out stronger on the other side. Mom, God hears your prayers for your children, no matter their age or their situation. Sometimes we have to suffer through the not knowing, through the pain. Sometimes we have to let them make their own mistakes so that they can learn and grow. He said, did God hear my prayer? I prayed for that. I prayed against that, and yet it still happened. Sometimes it is that way. Sometimes our kids have to go through things on their own, even as hard as we try to protect them from it. We can't stop praying, though. We always must pray for our children, no matter what is happening. Rebekah's long-awaited pregnancy is far from peaceful. In fact, it quickly becomes a source of distress. And in her struggle, she does something wise. Something every parent and really every believer should take note of. She takes her concerns straight to God. What happens next? Not only the future of her sons, or God reveals not only the future of her sons, but also the sovereign hand of God over all generations to come. In verse 22 through 26, The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went and inquired of the Lord. The Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first came out as red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. So they named him Esau. After his brother came out, with his hand grasping Esau's heel, he was also named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. Rebekah's experience is a difficult pregnancy, with her children jostling within her. And she knew something was wrong. She's never been pregnant before, but she could tell that something just wasn't right and what was going on. And so instead of going to Jacob this time, she went straight to the Lord instead. Rebekah, I knew I was going to mess that up. It's right here in my notes, and I still messed it up. Rebekah doesn't complain to Isaac. She goes straight to God. She cuts out the middleman. And I think that's where a lot of us are today. We don't need that middleman between us and God. We can take our petitions straight to Him. When something's not going right or we don't feel like something is good, we should go to God in prayer and ask God, what is going on? Even if we feel like this is an answer to the prayer we've already prayed for and we feel like everything's going good, we should go to God in prayer and ask. If something doesn't feel right, go to the Lord in prayer and ask. God will answer. When our parenting gets overwhelming, we should always seek God first. We should always ask God for guidance and help in all situations. And by doing this, Rebekah prayed to God about what was going on, and God gave her an answer and a prophecy at the same time. He said, "Two nations are in your womb. The older will serve the younger." So even before their birth, God declared His purpose in the lives of the two children that were in her womb. God's plans aren't bound by culture norms or expectations. And that's good news for us. Because in a world that says your worth is measured by your job title, your income, or having a perfect family, God works through ordinary, imperfect people to accomplish extraordinary things. You might think that after a word from God like that, everything would fall into place. But as we turn the page to the boys' earlier years, we find that even in the covenant family, the one chosen by God to bless the world, there is dysfunction, favoritism, and flawed decision making. And yet in the middle of all that mess, God's purposes quietly, steadily move forward. Picking up in verse 27, it says, "The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Once, when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished. He said to Jacob, 'Quick, let me have some of the red stew. I'm famished.' That is why he is also called Edom. Jacob replied, "First sell me your birthright." "Look, I am about to die," Esau said. "What good is a birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, and then he got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. We see dysfunction in this family right away as the kids grew up and started showing attributes for each parent. Esau is loved by Jacob. Rebekah, y'all can just shout out names and correct me if you know it. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau. But Rebekah loved Jacob. So we see right there in the family, we have problems. And you might not see it as parents as they're growing up, but I bet every one of you could tell me which one your mom loved more. Which one your dad loved more. I have 2 kids, 1 boy, 1 girl. I said, "You're my favorite daughter and you're my favorite son." But each one believed that the other one was the favorite. So I think we did a good mix there. But they'll point to, who's the favorite child. Or, we'll hear a comment like if one of them messes up, they're, "Oh, I'm the favorite child now." So, I mean, we all do that. We all look at who is the favorite, who our mom or dad loved more. And if you, as parents, play into that and cause dissension in the family, and cause problems later on in life. And that's exactly what they did. They encouraged one son to do another. And let's not forget that they had a word from God saying what was going to happen before the kids were born. God had already told them who was going to be the promise was going to go through and who wasn't. And what does Isaac do? Isaac loves Esau. Isaac wants to pass it down to his firstborn, but that's the way it was in their culture. The firstborn received everything. The firstborn son carried on the family name. They got it all, and that was in the birthright, which was given as a blessing. And once that blessing was given, it can't be taken back. But we see here that Esau, he didn't care about that. He did not care about the birthright at all and what was going to happen. He came in from hunting. He was hungry. NIV says famished. The ESV says exhausted. The New King James says faint. But none of them says that he was about to die. That if he didn't get food right then, it was going to be the end of it for him. But he was willing to give up that birthright for a bowl of stew. And we know that stew was red because that's what Edom means. And that's why we call him Edom, because that means red, because the stew was red. So he had red lentil stew, and he gave up his birthright. It says he hated his birthright. He didn't care about that. What does that matter to me now? I'm hungry now. And we look at that, and we laugh at that because it's funny, but how often do we do that? How often do we reach for the here and now and not care about what might happen in the future? We're so focused on now that we don't plan ahead. And then ahead comes, and we're not ready. We think about in the moment, and we're being trained that way with our phones. We get our 30-second updates, and if we need to know something, we can look it up right now. We don't have to wait for anything anymore. Microwaves, fast food, everything. We don't have to wait for anything. So when something happens in our lives that makes us have to pause for a minute, ain't nobody got time for that. We want it here, we want it now. And that's exactly what Esau did here. He didn't care about the birthright because that was in the future. In the future. Dad's still here, I don't have to worry about that. I'm hungry now, I need food, feed me. Not giving up anything monetarily here. Sure, you can have it. Give me the food. But we know that was in God's plan. We knew that that was going to happen even before this happened, that he was going to give that names. That Isaac was going to get it anyways. But this is just how it happened. This is just God working through that family, through the dysfunction of that family, and coming through the bad choices that Esau was making, was working in God's plan. So there's hope in every family, even the messy ones. God's purposes prevail even through flawed people. I think all the mistakes I've made in my life, and yet here I am. God has saved me in numerous occasions that I have made bad choices and put my life in danger. And yet God has seen me through. God uses the bad things that happen to us for good. God's purposes will always prevail, no matter how big of mistakes we make. There is no mistake that you can make that is so big that you can change God's plans. No matter what you've done, God knew you were going to do it before you did it. God has already worked that into his plans. He wants the best for you. And he wants you, like I said, he wants you to take that straight line. But so often we bounce back and forth. And God works every one of our turns for his glory and his purposes. Paul uses these two kids to show the difference between the law and the promise. That following the law is Esau, and yet faith is through Isaac. And that's in Romans 9, chapter 10 through 13. And he uses a line in that. He says, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. You guys know that line? And you come up to that and you're like, wait a minute. Jacob I loved, Esau I hated? That just seems a little unfair, doesn't it? I mean, he hadn't even been born yet. They haven't given the guy a chance. And he's right out the gate, he said, I hated him. The language of love and hate in this verse, it's challenging. But in biblical terms, love and hate are often used as a comparative sense rather than an emotion or personal hatred. To hate Esau does not imply a personal animosity, but rather a choice of Jacob over Esau in terms of God's covenant people. So Jacob I love refers to God's sovereign choice to work through Jacob's line, the Israelites, who would bring his promise through. Who he would bring his promise through. God's love for Jacob represents his choice to make Jacob the bearer of the covenant promise. Esau I hated refers to God's choice to reject Esau in terms of the covenant promises. Esau's descendants, the Edomites, were not chosen to be the recipients of God's covenant blessing. And we will see the fight between these two brothers will play out even later. The prophet Obadiah in chapter 1, verses 11 through 14 tells about how the Edomites were catching the Israelites and turning them over to the Babylonians. As the Babylonians come in and take over Jerusalem, they would catch them. The Edomites would catch them and turn them in as they fled. So God knows the character of these two before they're even born. We're given the prophecy. He tells them right out the gate, this is how it's going to be. They try to fight against it. But God, no matter how hard we try to fight against God, he always wins. It is It very much is. So this verse emphasizes God's absolute sovereignty in his choices. It's not about the moral character of Jacob and Esau, but about God's will in determining who will fulfill his purposes. God's choice of Jacob over Esau before they were born and before they had done anything good or bad underscores the nature of God's election. It serves as a powerful reminder that God's decisions are based on his wisdom and not human merit. So what do we take away from this story? It's tempting to read this ancient family struggles and think, what a mess. But if we're honest, our families aren't so different. We have waiting seasons, unanswered questions, and complicated relationships. And through it all, this passage reminds us that God hears the prayers of his people. And he works through imperfect families. And he keeps promises generation after generation. So as we close this morning, I want to leave you with this truth. God's hand is at work in your family, in your prayers, and in your struggles, even when you can't see it. Rebecca's story reminds us that God doesn't need perfect families or flawless mothers to fulfill his purposes. He's looking for people who are willing to seek him, pray in the waiting, and trust him when things don't make sense. Mothers, your prayers matter. Fathers, your leadership matters. And to every person here, grandparents, aunts, uncles, mentors, and spiritual family, your faithfulness matters. In the middle of life's mess and the complications we face, God's faithfulness is still at work. His purposes often unfold through ordinary, imperfect people who simply choose to pray, believe, and trust. So today, as we honor our mothers, let's also honor God, who is at work through every season of life and in every kind of prayer, in every kind of family. And let's commit ourselves to being people of prayer, faith, and hope. Will you stand with me, please? Like Rebecca, will you take your burdens and questions and concerns before the Lord? Will you trust that God's hand is at work in your family, even when you can't see the full picture? It's not about perfection. It's about persistence. It's not about having all the answers. It's about knowing where to take the questions. Today, if you're needing prayer, or if you have a decision of any time or any kind, I welcome you to come forward. Because I want to be a church of prayer. We know that God answers prayer. So if you need anything to lift up to the Lord this morning for your kids, for your family, please don't be afraid to come forward. We're going to sing a song. I'm going to pray, then we're going to sing a song. And then that will be your time to come forward. Let's pray. Father, thank you for being a God who works in the waiting, in the struggle, and in the messiness of our families. Thank you for hearing the prayers of mothers, fathers, grandparents, and every person who calls on your name. Help us to be people who seek you first, who trust you fully, and who hold on to hope even when life doesn't make sense. Today we honor the mothers among us, and we honor you, the God who faithfully walks with us through every season. Remind us this week that you are near and your hand is at work, and that no family is too complicated, no heart is too heavy, and no situation is too broken for your grace. We love you, Lord, and we trust you. In Jesus' name, amen.